I've had to read terrain with nothing but a broken compass and a gut feeling. I've walked through desert villages where smiling men handed you tea in one hand and triggered bombs with the other. So when people ask if I'm paranoid, I usually smile and say, I prefer prepared. But that evening when I came home to Edgeville, I realized I hadn't been nearly paranoid enough. It was my 5th wedding anniversary. 5 years of shared plans, promises, and what I thought was mutual belief in something bigger than ourselves. I'd been in and out of special operations since I was 23. They called me Storm in the Field, a nickname I earned not for speed, but for how I made people disappear before they knew they were in trouble. Yet at home I was Ryan. Just Ryan. Husband. Supposedly partner. Supposedly loved. Mallory had texted earlier in the day. Salon ran long. Don't peek in the fridge. I've got something planned. Happy almost anniversary, Rehart. The message made me smile. I believed it too. At least in that moment. Because back then I wanted to. I pulled into our driveway around 5:47 p.m. The sun had started its slow descent, that golden hour glow hanging low over the front porch like a warm memory. Our dog, Jasper, wasn't there to greet me. He'd passed 6 months ago, but my muscle memory still expected the click of his claws on hardwood. Mallory never wanted another dog. She said he was irreplaceable. Now I wonder if that was just another excuse to live lighter, freer. Unattached. The house was tidy, too tidy. The kind of clean that felt curated, like someone had staged a life rather than lived in it. I remember taking off my boots and setting them in the exact spot I always did, as if staying consistent could preserve something fragile. I headed to my office to grab the small gift I'd bought for Mallory in D.C., a locket made of brushed silver with our wedding date engraved inside. Nothing flashy. Just real. Like I'd hoped our life was. The box was still there, tucked inside my bottom drawer beneath a few training reports. But something else caught my eye. The printer. Its light blinked. Paper jam. One sheet hung limply from the output tray. I walked over, expecting some old invoice or coupon she'd printed last minute. But what I picked up made my stomach go cold. It was a reservation confirmation. The Grand Elmont Hotel. Mallory Hayward. Check-in this Friday. Deluxe suite. 2 adults. Privacy requested. No phone transfers. A spa credit attached. Dinner for 2 included. My name was nowhere on it. I stared at it for at least 2 minutes, just staring. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a surprise for us. Maybe she meant to tell me. Maybe the 2 adults was a clerical error. But every maybe felt like a plaster patch on a widening crack. I folded the paper neatly and slid it inside the velvet box under the locket. I didn't confront her. Not right away. I wanted more than suspicion. I wanted truth, the kind that doesn't twitch when looked at too long. She came home around 6:45, radiant and flushed. Her hair was freshly curled, lips painted a deep crimson she hadn't worn in years. There he is, she said with a grin that would have floored me 5 years ago. You're early. She kissed my cheek like a habit. I nodded, playing my role. We cooked together, or rather, I chopped onions while she threw together a pasta dish she called cheat day carbonara. We opened wine, her favorite Merlot. She talked about her friend Lauren's new job and how the salon was a disaster but worth it. I listened. I smiled where I was supposed to. And at some point between the toast and the second helping, I dropped it in casually. Oh, I heard someone at work mention the Grand Elmont. Place sounds swanky. You ever been? Mallory's fork paused midair, then lowered slowly. She didn't look startled, just measured. Oh yeah, she said with a little shrug. I booked a spa session there for next weekend. A treat to myself for surviving committee season. She laughed. Forgot I'd made it a double booking. You know how those online forms are. You leave one box checked and suddenly it's a honeymoon suite. Her voice stayed breezy, just the right balance of amused and dismissive. But I've interrogated people who used the exact same tone. People who were used to bluffing. People who had practiced the rhythm of deception like a second language. I didn't press her. Didn't let on that I'd seen the printout. Instead, I let her spin the story. Because that's what liars do, they talk. They fill space with explanations you didn't ask for. After dinner, she said she had a headache and went upstairs early. I cleaned the dishes and poured myself a second glass of wine. I sat at the kitchen island and stared at the wall where our engagement photo used to hang. She'd replaced it last spring with an abstract canvas in soft gray and gold. It fits the decor better, she'd said at the time. Now I think it just fit her new reality, a life where I wasn't central. I wandered back into the office, opened the box again, and unfolded the paper. I read the reservation 3 more times. I looked at the phrasing, every detail suddenly loud. No phone transfers. Privacy request. That wasn't a spade. That was discretion. For a long time I just sat there with it, the edges of the paper cutting into my fingertips like it wanted to bleed truth. I tried to piece together the story she'd built around me, around us. How long had I been the distraction while she arranged something else behind the curtain? It wasn't just the reservation. It was the shift in tone these last few months. The new passcode on her phone. The extra time volunteering at the foundation. The late nights with no details and vague explanations. I thought we were just in a slump like every couple hits. But that night I saw the slump for what it really was, the unraveling I hadn't noticed until the thread was already in her hands. I didn't sleep much that night. Mallory curled into me like she used to, but her body felt different. Not colder. Just foreign. Like sleeping beside someone else entirely. I stared at the ceiling and counted every breath until the sky turned pale. The illusion didn't shatter all at once. It cracked in the quiet. It frayed around the edges. A performance too smooth. A lie too casual. A detail too carefully omitted. By morning, nothing was different. Except everything was. You don't notice a bomb until it ticks. That's how it felt, not like an explosion, but like the quiet, maddening click of gears turning behind your back. After that night, everything looked different. Not just Mallory, everything. The walls of the house, the weight of the silence between us, even the way the light came through the curtains in the morning. It all felt staged. Like I was living in a set someone else designed. The next morning, she acted normal. More than normal, affectionate, attentive. She made coffee the way I like it, even added that stupid little cinnamon heart she puts on the foam when she's in a romantic mood. The gesture used to make me feel loved. That morning, it made me feel handled. I watched her across the kitchen table, sipping from a mug that said Storm Chaser's Wife, a joke gift from her sister. She wore it like a badge for years. But now all I could think was, what does she wear when I'm not around? Later that day, I checked our shared calendar. She'd marked a charity concert at the town hall next week. I clicked through the local listings just to be sure. It had already happened 2 weeks ago. I remembered now she'd come home late that night, said there was a post-event dinner. I didn't question it then. I was still giving her the benefit of the doubt. That's the thing about trust, it erodes in layers. Over the next few days, I started seeing it. The patterns I'd missed. She had *n putting her phone on silent during dinner, always face down. At first, I chalked it up to boundaries. Now, it felt more like quarantine. She took the phone with her everywhere. Not just to the bathroom, but to the laundry room, the garage, even to water the plants. Like someone terrified it might say too much in her absence. One night, I woke up to the glow of her screen facing the opposite wall. She was curled away from me, typing. I pretended to stir and mumble her name. She locked the screen so fast it felt like instinct. Just checking emails, she whispered. Couldn't sleep. She didn't even turn around. That's when I started documenting. I'm not proud of it, but I began logging things, timestamps, tone shifts, inconsistencies in her stories. It felt insane, obsessive. But I knew I wasn't crazy. I just needed clarity. She told me she was helping plan a fundraiser at the Harbor Club, said she had meetings every Tuesday and Thursday evening. I drove by the Harbor Club on one of those nights. The parking lot was empty. The lights were off. The next morning I asked how the meeting went. She smiled and told me they were ahead of schedule and might even pull off an extra silent auction. I just nodded. I didn't ask follow-ups anymore. I wasn't interested in her fiction. I was interested in the truth beneath it. That same week, I noticed she was spending more money, but not in the obvious ways. She wasn't buying dresses or jewelry or spa packages. No, it was more subtle. Rideshare charges. Digital hotel gift cards. Untraceable donations to vague nonprofits I'd never heard of. One receipt caught my eye: private travel concierge deposit. No further description. I checked our financial dashboard. It had been reorganized, new folders, a different structure. Which would have been fine, except I didn't do it. And Mallory never touched the finances. That was our deal. I handled logistics. She handled people. But now she had access. I kept digging. Took *TS. Exported PDFs. Late one night, I stayed up with a bottle of bourbon and her old iPad, the one she thought I'd sold. I managed to crack her backup email account. Inside was a statement from a secondary credit union, one I didn't even know she had access to. The statements were small but frequent. Recurring deposits. Some from LLG Holdings, others from initials I didn't recognize. I Googled every one of them. Most led nowhere. But one, listed as TQ Financial Group, matched an offshore fund mentioned in an old intelligence report I reviewed 5 years ago. That made me pause. Mallory wasn't a criminal. She was a speech therapist. A fundraiser. a church volunteer. But somehow her life had grown edges I couldn't see. I thought about bringing it up, about confronting her gently, asking questions that sounded casual but weren't. But every time I got close, she redirected like a pro. One night over dinner, I mentioned how quiet things had gotten around the foundation. I'd noticed their newsletter hadn't come out in a while. Oh, she said, casual as you please. They're restructuring the board. Nasty politics. I'm staying out of it. I later found out she'd resigned 2 months ago. Quietly. No announcement. No mention. That's when I looked at her social media. I'd never paid much attention before. We weren't the post-everything kind of couple. But suddenly it mattered. And what I saw made my stomach tighten. No photos of us in months. Not one. Her captions had changed too, once filled with we, now filled with I. Inspirational quotes, book excerpts, solo selfies in scenic places I didn't remember her going. When I asked about one, she told me it was from a hike she took with Lauren. But Lauren had moved to Seattle. It felt like looking at someone else's life. Like I'd been cropped out of my own story. There was one photo in particular that stuck with me. Mallory standing in front of a hotel fireplace, the same lobby style I remembered from the Grand Elmont brochure. Her hand held a glass of wine. Only one hand was visible, but her arm was angled as if it rested on something. Or someone. It looked candid. Too candid. I clicked through the comments. A few coworkers had liked it. One left a cryptic, fire wow, looking fierce, Mel. Another wrote, girl, this vibe is everything. Get it? What vibe? By the third week, I couldn't pretend anymore. I'd always been methodical, calculated, but now I felt it tightening inside me, the coiled weight of knowing and not acting, of sensing danger and doing nothing. I started sleeping less, eating less. She noticed, of course. One night she asked me if I was okay. I nodded, said I had work stress. You've seemed distant, she added, her voice soft but probing. Just tired, I replied. There's a lot I'm trying to process. She leaned in and kissed my forehead, and I swear it felt like someone else's lips. That night, she left her phone on the bathroom counter when she showered. It was a mistake. She never did that. I didn't want to look. I really didn't. But I did. No passcode. Just Face ID. I held it to her face while she sang over the water. There weren't many texts. Nothing obvious. But one message stood out buried in the trash folder of her email. Resending in case the first didn't go through. See you Sunday. Same sweet. Bring the necklace if you're wearing the dress. See. My chest went cold. Not angry. Not shocked. Just numb. See, just a letter. No full name. No reply string. Just one carefully deleted message that didn't quite disappear. When she came out of the shower, I had already placed the phone back. She kissed me again that night. And I let her. Some truths don't arrive in words. They arrive in silence. In empty rooms. In a sound you weren't supposed to hear. Or in my case, in the sight of 2 shadows behind fogged glass. I wasn't supposed to be home that day. I was scheduled to fly out for a contractor consultation in Atlanta, just 2 days, in and out. But a systems failure grounded our charter, and for the first time in months, I found myself with a free afternoon and nowhere I needed to be. Most people would have seen that as a gift. I saw it as a test. Or maybe something closer to fate. I didn't text Mallory. I didn't call. Something in me, something primal, told me not to. Instead, I parked 2 blocks away and walked the rest of the distance, quiet as shadow. I came in through the back gate, our code lock still disabled from when Jasper was alive. The kitchen door creaked faintly and I froze for a second, listening. Nothing but the faint hum of the HVAC. The house smelled like eucalyptus and something floral. Not Mallory's usual perfume. That alone made my pulse shift. I didn't move fast. I didn't need to. I'd cleared tighter spaces in darker places than this. The tension wasn't in the hallway or the stairwell. It was in the silence. The kind that grows louder the closer you get to the truth. I walked past the kitchen, noting 2 empty glasses on the counter and a half-open bottle of Merlot, the one we'd been saving for our anniversary dinner. Beside it, a phone rested, hers. Unlocked. That never happened. She was always protective of it. Obsessed with having it near. But now it sat there like an afterthought. Curiosity edged out restraint. The screen was open to the Photos app. Most were innocuous, selfies, work events, dinner plates, pictures of sunsets with cheesy captions. But one folder hidden within a folder titled Wellness caught my attention. It had only 4 photos. The most recent made me stop breathing for a moment. Mallory, in a silk dress I didn't recognize, seated on a man's lap in a hotel room. His face was partially obscured, turned toward her neck. But his build, lean, older, sharp suit, matched the type. The room matched the Grand Elmont suite photos from the website. The angle of the picture? A mirror selfie clearly taken by Mallory herself. There was no confusion. No question. This wasn't business. This wasn't friendship. This was in * Macy. Familiar, practiced in * Macy. The kind that didn't happen by accident. I stood in the kitchen for what felt like an hour, though it couldn't have been more than a minute. My mind wasn't racing. It was quiet, terrifyingly quiet. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel the kind of betrayal I expected. What I felt was stillness. Like the part of me that held on to hope had simply shut off. And then I heard it. Water. From upstairs. The shower was running. Footsteps. 2 distinct sets. Movement behind closed doors. I walked silently up the back stairs, the ones Mallory hated because they creaked. I knew which planks to step over. I'd done it 1,000 times before, usually trying not to wake her during early deployments. Funny how routines twist. As I reached the landing, I saw it, his coat. Draped over the banister. Definitely not mine. Cashmere. Pricey. Still warm from body heat. Beside it, a pair of leather gloves, the kind a man wears when he wants to appear refined but untouchable. I didn't need to open the bathroom door. I didn't need to burst in or shout or catch anyone in the act. I saw their shadows through the frosted glass, 2 silhouettes, close, intertwined. Steam billowed through the narrow gap where the door didn't quite seal. I stood there, one hand on the frame, the other clenched around my own restraint. They laughed. A light, relaxed kind of laugh, like people who thought they were safe. I could have done 100 things in that moment. I had the training. I knew how to enter a room without being seen, how to silence a threat without making a sound. But this wasn't a battlefield. This was my house. My life. And I was already gone from it. So I turned and walked away. No confrontation. No raised voice. No door slammed open. I went back down the stairs and out through the kitchen like a ghost retracing his own death. I didn't touch her phone again. Didn't erase the photos. Didn't leave a note. I just left. By the time I got to my truck, I still hadn't blinked. I sat there with the door open, letting the cold air hit my face. I didn't know where to go. I didn't want to drive angry, but I wasn't angry. That's what scared me the most. I felt nothing. It wasn't numbness. It was clarity. Like waking from a dream and realizing it was never your dream to begin with. I drove aimlessly for a while. Ended up at the overlook near Hillcrest Ridge, a spot we used to hike to when we were still us. I used to think it was peaceful. Now it felt like a lie I hadn't noticed until it was too late. I watched the town lights flicker in the valley and wondered how many other stories were unfolding right then, how many other people were sitting in cars, staring into the dark, realizing their lives weren't what they thought. After an hour, I checked into a roadside motel under an old alias I hadn't used in years. Paid cash. No questions. The man at the desk didn't even look up. That was the kind of invisibility I needed, anonymity wrapped in bed sheets and buzzed-out cable news. I laid on the stiff mattress and stared at the water-stained ceiling. I ran over every moment of the past year like it was a crime scene. I remembered the long dinners where she seemed distracted. The way she smiled at texts she never shared. The phantom scent of cologne in the car. The volunteer hours that never matched up. The way she stopped asking if I was coming home early. And through it all, I remembered how I'd explained it away. How I told myself not to overthink. How I trusted her. But trust is a currency. And I'd spent mine on a counterfeit. I slept a few hours. Maybe less. At dawn, I got in the truck and drove out to a diner by the old marina. Ordered eggs I didn't touch and drank 3 cups of coffee in silence. Nobody noticed me. I liked that. By 10 a.m. I'd made a decision. One I knew I wouldn't come back from. I wouldn't confront her. Not yet. She was a practiced liar. Confrontation would just give her another performance to star in. No. If I was going to tear down the illusion she built, I needed to do it on my terms. With facts. With silence. With precision. I opened an encrypted messaging channel and pinged someone I hadn't spoken to in a long time. You still have access to that off-grid apartment in Eddington? For you? Always. You in trouble. I paused before replying. Not yet. But someone else's. There's a difference between silence and strategy. Silence is passive, what cowards use to avoid confrontation. But strategy is something else entirely. Strategy is patience we *p*nized. By the time I walked out of that motel and back into the cold light of morning, I wasn't Ryan the husband anymore. I wasn't Storm either. I was something new, someone in between. Still breathing, still thinking, but emotionally cauterized. I didn't want revenge. Not yet. I wanted the truth. All of it. And I wanted it without the sugarcoating. The apartment in Eddington was exactly how I remembered it, minimalist, clean, and anonymous. Technically, it didn't exist, not in any system that would matter. It belonged to Logan McKay, a former teammate of mine from a Black Ops unit that doesn't officially exist either. He left the field to specialize in digital privacy or, depending who you ask, legal gray zone surveillance. To me, he was just the guy you call when you need to see the world for what it really is. I let myself in with the key code he texted and found everything just as I needed. A secure laptop, encrypted routers, and a small armory disguised as a storage cabinet. I wasn't planning to use the we*p*ns, but I respected the symbolism. Sometimes a we*p*n is just a reminder that you're still dangerous. By the second night, I'd installed remote access to the smart home system Mallory insisted we upgrade 6 months ago, voice-controlled thermostats, door locks, security cameras. I added my own layers on top. Hidden microphones in the vent shafts. Pin-sized cameras in the bookshelf. I had access to the router now too, which meant I could see every connected device, every search, every unguarded text that went through her Wi-Fi. She wouldn't see me coming. That wasn't the point. The point was, I needed to see her. The version she showed me wasn't real anymore. I wanted the unfiltered feed. Logan helped me install a program that ran her phone activity through a virtual mirror. I couldn't see encrypted apps, but I could track locations, call times, and GPS pings accurate within a 5-foot radius. I didn't want to see her photos. I didn't want to hear her voice whispering things meant for someone else. I just wanted proof. Not to punish. Not yet. To prepare. The man from the hotel wasn't a complete mystery for long. His code had a dry cleaning tag. Logan enhanced the video from the living room feed and captured the barcode ID. From there, we found the cleaner, a boutique shop in town that serviced legacy clients only. We tracked the tag to a regular customer named Charles Finch. On paper, Charles was a retired attorney from upstate New York. Quiet, private, early 60s. Recently relocated to Edgeville under the pretense of semi-retirement and volunteer legal advocacy. But that story fell apart faster than his resume under pressure. Logan had a theory. People like Finch don't just land in towns like Edgeville by coincidence. He's hiding. Or hunting. He wasn't wrong. Digging into Finch's past felt like peeling wallpaper. Every layer hid another one beneath it. He'd used at least 3 aliases in the last 10 years. None with a clean history. All tied to women who'd inherited large sums after unexpected tragedies. A boating accident in Maine. A gas leak in Chicago. A carbon monoxide death in Aspen. Every woman had one thing in common: they were engaged or recently married. And every single case had been quietly closed without a formal investigation. The kicker? Each victim had recently taken out a substantial life insurance policy on their partner just weeks before their death. It didn't take long to find Mallory's policy. Logan pulled it from a shared folder on her cloud drive, buried behind decoy PDFs. A scanned document from the Lennox Group, a high-value insurance agency that specializes in executive coverage. The file was timestamped just 4 weeks earlier. Policy total, $2.5 million. Beneficiary, Mallory Hayward. My name was listed as the insured. My signature was forged sloppily. Not the kind of forgery meant to be missed. The kind meant to survive a quick audit. Mallory had always been good with details, just not the right ones. I stared at the screen for a long time after that. She hadn't just cheated. She hadn't just lied. She had made a choice. A series of them. And now there was a paper trail. A motive. A plan. It's funny. When you're trained to dismantle networks, to predict how and where threats will move, you stop thinking in terms of betrayal. You start thinking in vectors. Leverage points. Weak links. Mallory had become a weak link in her own story. The house was quiet most nights. I watched from the Eddington flat as she poured wine, texted, paced. She kept her phone in hand at all times, only putting it down to shower. Sometimes she wore the necklace I gave her last year. Other times she wore something new. Subtle, elegant, clearly a gift. Finch's taste. He never spent the night, but he was there often. Tuesday evenings. Friday mornings. Sometimes Sunday after brunch. Always just long enough to avoid suspicion. Always just long enough to be consistent. They were careful, but not careful enough. A week later, I intercepted a phone call between Mallory and someone labeled MM in her contacts. Not Finch. A third party. No, everything's in place, she said. He thinks Ryan's still in Atlanta. A pause. Laughter. No, I haven't told Charles about the second policy yet. He doesn't need to know everything. Silence. Then, more words I'll never forget. Worst case scenario, we fast-track the accident. Charles knows how to make it look clean. That was the moment my hand curled so tightly around the glass I nearly snapped it in two. Not because I was surprised, but because I finally understood what I'd become. I wasn't a person to her. I was a payout. She thought I was dead already. Just not physically. I met with Logan the next morning and laid it all out. We flipped the board, I told him. We give them what they want, but on our terms. He nodded. We bait the hook. We built a plan. Step 1, vanish. Leave the illusion of movement, GPS signals, flight records, fake texts, a burner email account confirming my presence in the Rockies. Photos of trail markers and tents, generated via AI filters and old archives. Step 2, lay the digital breadcrumbs. Location pings, check-ins. A false sighting posted anonymously to a hiker's forum. Step 3, get Mallory and Charles to believe their window was closing. The policy required an accidental death within 30 days of issuance to trigger the payout clause. That meant pressure. That meant predictable behavior. That meant opportunity. I watched as they began circling. Like vultures over a map they didn't realize I'd drawn. Every move they made from that point on was part of my plan. They thought I was off the grid. But I wasn't off anything. I was right under their feet. Waiting. There's a moment in every mission where you cross the point of no return. Where surveillance becomes action. Intelligence becomes offense. When I watched the final timestamp come through, Mallory logging into the insurance portal, checking the status of the claim, verifying the terms, I knew we were past recon. We were at war. But the battlefield wasn't overseas this time. It was my home, my name, my life. And I wasn't wearing camo or armor. Just the same face she used to kiss goodnight. The one she planned to bury. I wasn't going to let her. The plan was simple. Dangerous, but simple. Create the illusion of death, one convincing enough to make them move. Not overnight. Gradually. Organically. And once they believed the trap was set, I'd spring mine instead. Step 1 was disappearance. I left a carefully staged trail of digital breadcrumbs. A solo hiking trip through a remote section of the Sierra Reserve, the kind of place where tourists go to unplug and occasionally vanish. I used burner phones to log trail entries, booked fake campground slots under assumed names, and had Logan spoof my phone's GPS data using a clone device I mailed to a ranger station 3 states away. All of it was fed into Mallory's and Charles's devices through indirect pings, Bluetooth shadows, metadata leaks, breadcrumb ads that tracked IPs. I even uploaded staged trail selfies using AI composites, realistic enough to fool facial detection software. Logan added weather filters and digital timestamp encryption to make them look authentic. If they dug deep, they'd find exactly what I wanted. A man off the grid, unreachable, moving further into isolation. And then I went silent. No pings. No messages. Just an absence. That was the real hook. Not presence, but void. People panic when a ghost walks into their life, but they go greedy when it vanishes. Sure enough, Mallory began floating the narrative to friends. He went hiking. Left his satellite phone at home. Can you believe it? She'd say, followed by a sad smile. I guess some part of him just needed space. Logan intercepted that from a mic embedded in her car's dash. Her voice cracked in all the right places. Convincing. Rehearsed. A performance. Charles, meanwhile, started researching elevation hazards. Drowning risk. How long a body could go undiscovered in certain rivers. He even downloaded an open-source coroner's guide to fall damage. That's when we knew. They were ready. So I gave them a scenario. A cliff trail known for fatal drops. A remote overlook marked on outdated hiking maps. Logan used old records and satellite overlays to fabricate a search report filed anonymously through an out-of-date forestry portal. All it said was, saw lone man near perimeter trailhead at dusk. Heard rock slide. No visual confirmation after. That was the final push. 3 days later, Mallory called her sister crying. He's missing, she said. I think he's dead. 2 days after that, she filed the claim. Charles booked a flight. But not to the mountains. To a private hangar on the outskirts of town. That's where I waited. I baited the location through a burner email, supposedly from a blackmailer claiming to have surveillance footage of an incident involving Charles and another target, one of his past aliases, one of his accidental tragedies. I made sure the footage preview was convincing enough to spark panic. The sender claimed to want $75,000 for the silence, small potatoes for a man like Charles, but enough to draw him out quickly without handlers. The meet was set at a decommissioned hangar at Ashton Field. Logan rigged it in less than 6 hours, motion sensors, pressure plates, ceiling-mounted cameras. I set up infrared triggers for redundancy. Every angle was covered. The footage would be real-time encrypted and auto-uploaded to a secure cloud relay with time-stamped distribution schedules. No erasing. No do-overs. When Charles arrived, he was alone, just like we hoped. He came wearing gloves, dark coat, carrying a briefcase. I watched him through the feed, standing in the middle of the cavernous floor, turning in slow circles like he could smell the trap but not see it. Then I stepped out from the shadows. No mask. No disguise. Just me. Alive. He froze but didn't show fear. Not immediately. People like him don't flinch until you take away control. I know who you are, I said. And I know what you've done. Ryan Hayward, he replied, cool as a snake. You're supposed to be dead. Disappointed? He adjusted his cufflinks. No. Just surprised. Mallory was very convincing. I almost laughed. Yeah. She's good at that. He didn't bolt. That's how I knew we had him. The smart ones run. The arrogant ones negotiate. What do you want? He asked. I want you to talk. All of it. Names. Locations. Patterns. Everything. And I want you to do it on camera. You think I'm just going to confess because you ask? I tapped my earpiece. Already did. He looked around, finally noticing the sensors blinking red. Logan's voice piped into my comms. We've got full audio, visual. Multiple redundancies. 10 minutes in and he's already naming people. Charles turned pale. I've got years of your work archived, I said. The staged deaths. The women. The insurance payouts. Your aliases. Your shell companies. The safe house in Cartagena. The marina in La Jolla. All of it. His jaw twitched. You don't have proof. I don't need proof. You just gave it to me. I stepped closer. And here's the part you don't understand, I said. I'm not the victim. You didn't K***LL me. You missed. And now you're going to help me burn it all down. We spent 43 minutes inside that hangar. He talked. Oh, he talked. Threats turned to bargains. Bargains turned to panic. Eventually, panic turned to confession. When it was done, I had enough to bury not just Charles, but the entire network he worked for. I left him there. Let the feds pick him up. Logan had already triggered a federal flag in the system with the GPS tags we'd laced into the hangar entrance. They'd find him ranting about a dead man coming back to life. And then they'd find the files. I sent the data to 5 locations. A retired Navy JAG with a vendetta against insurance fraud. A private cyber law firm known for exposing corporate corruption. A federal investigative journalist Mallory once tried to hire for PR work. A nonprofit legal foundation that investigates suspicious death payouts. And a dead man's switch archive that would auto-release to the press in 48 hours unless I stopped it. Insurance fraud. Premeditated conspiracy. Attempted murder. All documented. All verified. I drove home that night with the windows down. Cold wind tearing through the cab. It was the first time I'd breathed freely in weeks. Maybe months. I wasn't just alive. I was back in control. And Mallory had no idea. Not yet. I returned home 2 days later. Mallory had no idea. As far as she knew, I was missing, possibly dead somewhere in the wilderness. She was wearing black when I walked in. Not full mourning, just enough to appear concerned. She was packing a small overnight bag, probably for a discreet rendezvous or to finalize the next step with a lawyer. She turned around and dropped her phone. Her face went white. Ryan. I didn't say anything. I dropped a thick manila folder onto the counter. Inside, surveillance footage, financial records, audio files, a copy of the insurance policy she'd forged, and the confession from Charles Finch. You were going to K***LL me? I said.